At Falcon Ridge Air Base, mornings followed a strict rhythm always. The control tower woke first, lights blinking above silent runways below. Radios crackled, checklists flipped, and jets waited like restrained thunder. Near the tower stairs, an old man swept methodically, alone. Elderly American male, white beard, faded red shirt, blue jeans. His worn boots scuffed concrete, his broom traced calm arcs. He arrived before sunrise, same route, same pauses, same silence. Young airmen noticed him like background noise until boredom sharpened. A trainee laughed, nudging friends, pointing at the old routine. "Tower janitor doing laps again," he joked, voice too loud. Another smirked. "Maybe he thinks sweeping controls the wind today." They watched him stop at each step, glance upward, then continue. The old man never answered, never corrected, never even frowned. His silence became their target, his routine their daily comedy. One airman clapped loudly behind him, waiting for startled reaction. Nothing. The broom kept moving, steady as a metronome on concrete. "He's got no personality," someone said, laughing at nothing. "Or he's deaf," another added, "or he just hates people." The old man set debris into a dustpan, dumped it carefully. He did not rush, did not look at them, did not speak. That restraint made them bolder, like sharks circling quiet water. One stepped closer, blocking his path near the safety railing. "Hey, sir," he said, mocking the honorific with a grin. "What's today's schedule? Sweep, then stare at the tower." The old man looked up, calm eyes like dull steel. "Stay clear of the rail," he said softly, then resumed. The trainee laughed, pleased he got words, even minimal. "He talks!" Someone shouted, and more laughter spilled outward. The old man returned to his route, broom scraping, boots dragging softly. He passed the tower door, paused, listened, then continued again. None of them noticed that pause was not random, not habit. Inside the tower, controllers prepared a training rotation for new trainees. A small transport was inbound, a medical hop, routine and unglamorous. A pair of fighters were also scheduled for quick touch and go. The tower's voice traffic was normal, clipped, professional, predictable. The old man's routine remained outside, quiet, ignored, disposable. Yet his eyes kept flicking to the windsock, then the tower windows. The airmen kept joking, escalating their little game with louder lines. "Bet he salutes the tower," one said, miming a salute, laughing. Another added, "He probably thinks he's the boss of air traffic." They laughed again, then tossed a crushed cup near his swept line. The old man stopped, picked it up, and dropped it away. He did not scold them, did not demand respect, did not threaten. That mercy confused them, so they filled the gap with cruelty. "Why so quiet?" the first trainee asked, stepping closer again. "You got secrets, old man, or just nothing upstairs?" The old man's jaw tightened briefly, then relaxed. He kept sweeping, but his listening became sharper, more focused. A faint change in the morning sounded wrong to him, subtle. Not the loud engines, not the distant carts, something else. It was timing, cadence, the way radios carried hesitation. He glanced toward the tower windows and saw a controller lean forward. He heard a transmission repeat twice, slightly strained, slightly rushed. The trainees did not hear that difference. They heard only jokes. The old man walked to the stairwell base and paused again. He looked up at the tower door as if measuring distance. Then he turned toward the runway edge and studied the windsock. It twitched in a pattern that bothered him, irregular and shifting. He listened again, eyes narrowing, the broom now still. The trainees saw the stillness and laughed louder, thinking they won. "Look, he froze," one said. "System rebooting. Grandpa needs updates." The old man did not answer, but his hand tightened. He took a breath that looked almost like a decision. "Keep listening, and which city are you listening from? And if you enjoy the story, please subscribe for more." He set the broom down carefully and started walking toward the tower. His pace remained calm, but his direction changed, and that mattered. The trainees watched, amused, until they saw his eyes. Those eyes were not confused, not timid, not empty. They looked like a man hearing danger before it arrived and choosing. Above them, the tower radios continued, and somewhere in that chatter was a small mistake about to grow teeth. The base kept moving, unaware, while the quiet old man climbed. The trainees followed at a distance, still laughing under their breath. They wanted to see the old man get scolded inside. "He's gonna tell the tower how to talk," one whispered, delighted. Another replied, "Maybe he'll sweep the radar screen clean for them." The old man climbed steadily, boots thudding softly on metal steps. He did not hurry, yet he did not stop now either. At the top landing, he paused, listening through the door. Voices inside were crisp, but a thin edge crept in. A controller repeated a call sign, then corrected a heading quickly. Another voice answered, then overlapped, then corrected again. It sounded normal to young ears, but the old man heard the pattern. Two small corrections too close together meant someone was behind. He opened the tower door without drama, stepping into the bright glass room. Young controllers glanced up, surprised, annoyed, then returned to screens. "Sir, you can't be up here," a junior controller snapped. The old man raised a hand gently, not challenging, just requesting. "Which runway did you clear the transport for?" he asked quietly. The junior controller frowned, irritation rising. "This is controlled airspace," he said. "Maintenance stays downstairs." The old man did not argue the rule. He asked again. "Which runway?" he repeated. "And what wind shift did you brief?" The supervisor, an experienced sergeant, looked up sharply. "What's your name?" he asked, voice cautious now. The old man answered with a simple contractor badge name, nothing impressive. The supervisor almost dismissed him, then heard another radio call. The inbound transport reported turbulence on final, unexpected. The junior controller offered a correction, then hesitated. The old man's eyes moved to the windsock indicator on a panel. "Gust line," he murmured, "crossing from the north, fast." The supervisor stiffened, realizing the old man was tracking details. Outside the glass, the trainees pressed near the stairwell, trying to listen. One laughed quietly. "He's gonna get kicked out any second." The old man stepped closer to the supervisor, careful, respectful. "Your wind reading is lagging," he said. "Your anemometer is iced or clogged. You're feeding pilots stale data." The junior controller scoffed. "That equipment is calibrated weekly." The old man pointed toward a small sensor mast outside. "Look at it," he said. "The vane is sticking. See the jitter." The supervisor followed his finger and saw it, tiny but real. The junior controller opened his mouth, then closed it, uneasy. The supervisor grabbed binoculars, checked quickly, then swore under breath. "Tower, update wind check," he ordered, voice tight. The transport called again. "Confirm crosswind component," sounding strained. The junior controller began to answer, then the old man spoke softly. "Tell him to go around," he said. "Don't commit to this pass." The junior controller snapped. "We don't take go-around calls from contractors." The old man's gaze stayed on the approach path, steady. "Then take it from your eyes," he replied. Through the glass, the transport's nose dipped slightly, then corrected. The old man's hand tightened on the rail. "He's fighting it," he said. The supervisor hesitated, pride battling caution. The junior controller kept talking, trying to sound confident. The trainees downstairs began to quiet, sensing tension above. One whispered, "Why is nobody yelling at him yet?" Another answered, "Because something's wrong, I think." The supervisor finally keyed the mic. "Transport tower, wind is variable, recommend go around." The pilot replied instantly, relief audible. "Going around tower." The transport climbed, banking slightly, and a sudden gust slammed the wing, visible even from the tower. The controllers went silent for a beat, then moved fast. The supervisor turned to the old man, eyes narrowed. "How did you see that before our instruments?" he demanded. The old man's answer was simple. "Routine," he said, "teaches you what normal sounds like." Junior controller bristled, embarrassed, and tried to reassert control. "This doesn't change policy," he said. The old man nodded, not offended. "Policy isn't the point," he replied. "People are." Below, the trainees looked up, their jokes shrinking. The old man walked to the door, ready to leave, as if his job was done. Then a radio call cut through, urgent and new. Another aircraft, a fighter on touch and go, reported wind shear 2. The supervisor stiffened, realizing it was bigger than one sensor. The old man stopped, listening, as if hearing a familiar storm returning. His routine had brought him here, but the airfield's routine was now breaking. The supervisor ordered an immediate wind verification, but the tower was already behind. Controllers juggled calls, spacing aircraft wider, updating advisories. Outside, clouds thickened in a fast-moving band, dragging shadows across runway paint. The old man stood near the door, silent again, watching. The junior controller tried to ignore him, yet kept glancing his way. A second sensor alarm blinked briefly, then steadied like a lie correcting itself. The old man's eyes narrowed, and he stepped toward the supervisor. "It's not only ice," he said quietly. "It's power to the sensor line." The supervisor frowned. "We have backup feeds." The old man pointed toward a cabinet panel near the floor. "That breaker is warm," he said. "Smell it." The supervisor hesitated, then leaned down and caught a faint burnt odor. His face changed, professionalism turning to alarm. "Tower, hold all movements," he called, voice firm. A pilot answered. "Say again, tower," confused. The supervisor repeated, "Hold all movements, possible sensor failure, stand by." Below on the apron, a few vehicles stopped, unsure. The trainees on the stairwell landing went dead quiet now, sensing something serious. The old man knelt, opened the cabinet carefully, and pointed at a wire bundle. "This is chafed," he said. "Vibration did it, routine did it, time did it." The supervisor stared, then called maintenance to climb. While they waited, the old man looked out the tower glass, scanning the approach corridor. He seemed to measure spacing by instinct, not screen. A controller asked, skeptical, "Who taught you tower work?" The old man answered without looking, "I learned when mistakes killed friends." The words landed like a weight in the room. Then from the far entrance, doors opened, and a small group stepped in fast. a base operations colonel, a chief master sergeant, and behind them a general officer. The general's presence filled the tower immediately like pressure. Controllers snapped upright, hands hovering over panels, posture perfect. The general looked at the supervisor first, then at the screens, then at the cabinet. "Report," he demanded, voice controlled. The supervisor began explaining, fast and precise, but the general's eyes drifted to the old man. The old man stood, wiping hands on a rag, still calm. The general's gaze locked on him, and the general froze mid-step. His expression shifted from command to disbelief, then to recognition. The colonel noticed and went quiet. The chief master sergeant's eyes widened, mouth parting slightly. "No way," the chief murmured, almost involuntary. The general took a slow step toward the old man, staring at the faded red shirt, the white beard, the worn boots, the calm eyes. The tower, already tense, became utterly still. Radios continued outside, but inside silence tightened. The general spoke softly, almost to himself. "You're supposed to be gone," he said. The old man nodded once. "I tried," he replied. The general's hands clenched, then relaxed. "Sir," the general said, and that single word shocked everyone. General calling a maintenance worker sir shattered every assumption. The junior controller's face drained of color. The trainees on the stairwell gripped the rail, eyes wide. The old man looked uncomfortable, as if the word sir was heavier than any insult earlier. "Don't," he said quietly. The general ignored the protest, eyes wet but controlled. "You saved a crew today," the general said. The old man shook his head. "I heard a pattern," he replied. "That's all." The general turned to the supervisor. "Lock down runway operations," he ordered. "Full pause until sensors verified and issue wind shear warning." The supervisor snapped, "Yes, sir." Outside, the effects were immediate. Taxiing aircraft stopped, ground vehicles halted, and the runway went still, an unnatural quiet spreading. In the tower, the general kept staring at the old man like history had walked through a door. "You always did routine," the general said softly. "Routine kept us alive," the old man answered. The chief master sergeant swallowed hard, then whispered to the colonel, "It's him, sir, the one from the mountain strip." The colonel's eyes widened, and he looked at the old man with dawning awe. The general stepped back, posture shifting into something ceremonial. Controllers sensed it and held their breath. The general's voice lowered. "I'm calling the tower silent," he said, "until we honor what just happened." The phrase carried like a commandment, and the tower obeyed. Radios were reduced, voices clipped, unnecessary chatter gone. The airfield below moved slower, quieter, as if the base itself sensed a legend had returned. The general walked to the main radio console and raised a hand. "All stations," he said, voice even, "this is base command. Maintain radio discipline. Tower remains silent except essentials." The controllers nodded, stunned, and complied immediately. The usual chatter vanished, replaced by short, formal transmission. On the apron, personnel looked around, unsettled by the sudden quiet. The trainees downstairs felt their stomachs tight. They had never heard the airfield so still. The general turned back to the old man, eyes locked, and spoke with controlled emotion. "You pulled my aircraft out of a canyon strip," he said, "with no lights, no charts, and a storm." The old man's jaw tightened, not from pride, but from memory. "It was routine," he answered. "Checklists, listening, patience." The general shook his head. "It was impossible," he corrected, "and you did it anyway." The colonel beside him glanced at the cabinet, then at the old man, connecting dots. "Sir, is he who I think he is?" he whispered. The general nodded once, grim. "He is the reason your predecessor survived," he said. The old man shifted, uncomfortable under attention, and tried stepping toward the door. "I should get back," he murmured. The general's voice sharpened. "No," he said, "not yet." He motioned toward the tower windows overlooking the field. "Look," he told everyone. Controllers turned. Below, maintenance crews had stopped vehicles, pilots waited near ladders, and a formation of personnel began gathering at the base of the tower. The chief master sergeant moved quickly, issuing quiet instructions. The trainees who had mocked earlier were pulled into the gathering, faces pale. They looked up at the tower, seeing the old man framed in glass like a silhouette. The general stepped beside him, shoulders squared, and keyed an internal speaker. "All personnel at base of tower stand by," he commanded. The response was immediate, bodies straightening, motion freezing. Then the general turned to the old man and said, "You didn't want recognition, but they need perspective." The old man stared out, seeing rows of young faces, the same age as men he once led. His eyes softened for a moment, then hardened again with discipline. The general stepped back, heels together, and rendered a salute so sharp it seemed to cut the air. The old man flinched slightly, then returned it with steady precision. At the base below, the chief master sergeant shouted, "Attention!" Hundreds of boots snapped into alignment. The general spoke again through the tower speaker, voice carrying. "Today a man prevented loss of life by noticing what instruments missed," he said. He did it without rank, without noise, without ego. The trainees swallowed, their earlier jokes now unbearable. Some of you mocked his routine, the general continued. You called his silence weakness. You called his work invisible. The airfield held its breath. His routine is why I'm alive, the general said. His silence is why my crew is alive. The general lowered his hand, then raised it again, saluting once more, holding it longer. The chief master sergeant commanded, "Render honors." Below, the entire assembly snapped to salute in unison, arms rising, faces rigid, eyes forward. The airfield, already quiet, became sacredly still. Even the wind felt muted. The old man's eyes glistened, and he blinked slowly, fighting the wave of memory that surged behind his calm face. He returned the salute again, slow and deliberate, acknowledging the honor without craving it. The general finally dropped his salute and turned slightly toward the controllers, voice steady. "Maintain tower silence," he ordered. "This is a reminder. Discipline is quiet." Controllers nodded, understanding the symbolism now. The tower had fallen silent not from malfunction, but from respect. Down below, the trainees who had laughed earlier stood saluting, hands trembling. They had mocked a man's routine without knowing that routine was forged in survival. The old man lowered his hand, gripping the broom handle again like an anchor. The general leaned in, voice low. "You always listened," he said. The old man nodded. "Because noise lies," he replied. The base remained frozen a moment longer, then slowly, under command, movement returned, but the quiet stayed inside them. When the assembly was dismissed, the airfield did not snap back to careless chatter. People moved with softer voices, careful steps, and a new awareness. The general stayed in the tower a moment, watching the old man avoid eye contact, returning to his broom like it was safer than praise. "Sir," the general said gently, "I can't let you vanish again." The old man shook his head, tired. "Let me work," he replied. The general exhaled and nodded, then turned to the colonel. "Ensure sensors are repaired," he ordered, "and log this as a safety stand-down lesson." The colonel nodded, still stunned. The chief master sergeant stepped toward the old man, voice respectful. "Sir, those trainees," he said, "they want to apologize." The old man hesitated, then sighed. "Bring them," he said. Minutes later, the trainees entered the tower quietly, no swagger left. The one who had clapped behind him stared at the floor. "Sir," he began, voice cracking, "we were out of line. We joked about your routine, your silence. We didn't know." The old man studied him, calm, eyes steady. "Not knowing isn't the whole problem," he said softly. "Deciding someone is nothing without looking is the problem." The trainee swallowed hard. "I'm sorry," he whispered. The old man nodded once. "Good," he said. "Now listen. Routine is not boredom. Routine is discipline. Routine is how you catch the small things before they grow teeth." The trainees nodded, absorbing every word like a first real lesson. The old man turned slightly toward the windows. "The tower," he continued, "is not power, it is responsibility. Your voice can save lives or end them, so speak only what matters and listen twice as hard." The general watched, pride and gratitude mixing behind his controlled face. The junior controller, embarrassed earlier, stepped forward and said, "Sir, how did you know the wind data was stale?" The old man answered simply, "Because the world tells you if you pay attention." He pointed toward the windsock and the cloud band. "See the shift, feel the timing. Instruments help, but senses survive." The trainees looked out, seeing the field differently now. The old man picked up his broom again and moved toward the door. The general stopped him gently. "Sir," he said, "at least let us mark your access and give you proper clearance." The old man shook his head. "I don't need a badge to care," he replied. The general smiled faintly, then nodded. "Then accept this," he said, offering a simple unit coin, not flashy, just heavy. The old man hesitated, then took it, closing his fingers around it like a memory. "Fine," he murmured, "but don't make a show." The general's voice softened. "No show," he promised. Down on the apron, word had already spread. Personnel who passed the tower looked up with quiet respect. No one stared loudly, but many nodded. As the old man descended the stairs, the trainees followed a step behind, not mocking now, but learning his pace. At the bottom, a pilot waiting near a ladder recognized the general's posture and asked, "Was that him?" The general answered, "Yes," and the pilot's expression changed to reverence. The old man crossed the concrete and resumed his sweeping near the taxi line, routine restored, but now the routine meant something to everyone watching. The trainees approached carefully. "Sir," one asked, "what should we do first?" The old man did not smile, but his voice warmed slightly. "Start by respecting the quiet," he said. "Then do your job right." The airfield's roar returned over the next hours, but the control tower's earlier silence stayed inside them as a lesson. And as the sun rose higher, the old man's broom traced calm arcs again, not as a joke, but as a reminder that the strongest discipline is the kind you don't announce.